Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm Keith Downey, your host, and excited to welcome our next guest, John Wood. He's an author, national speaker, and president of the nonprofit organization Extraordinary Mission, and has a brand new book series called The 7 Deadly Dragons, a series that's authentically Catholic and just a great way to help parents and children alike grow in virtue. My goodness, good morning and welcome to the show, John.
Good morning, Keith. It is great to be here.
Yes, and thank you so much for joining us. First off, I'm curious, in general, what was it that inspired you to really focus on the formation of children, obviously in the pursuit of sainthood?
Well, actually, my target audience, as I've become a speaker and writer, is actually young parents. So I do a lot of sacramental retreats. I do second grade sacramental retreats. My wife's a second grade catechist. You know, I used to travel the country and do all these parish missions and talks. And my frustration was a lot of young parents don't come to those, especially if they're not really engaged. But I realized young parents come when their kids want First Communion. So my wife's a second grade catechist, and all these parents are showing up. I'm like, we need to develop a world-class second grade communion retreat. And we come up with this Dragon Slayer idea to kind of entice the kids that dragons are sins, they're temptations, they're obstacles to becoming saints. But we require the parents to be there. And when we write these stories and we give these materials, we want the kids to get engaged. We want them to be excited. But more than anything, we want to give parents resources to teach their kids the faith. And that's what we kind of say at the beginning of the books. Like, you know, we're not trying to teach everything to your kid. We're trying to give you the resources and ideas and things that your kids might know and love. And you can use that to talk about that virtue as a family. And because we feel like the parents are primary educators, and we feel the stories can help them in a great way.
That's so important, and I feel like that's happened for so long, is that parents, they just kind of drop their kids off and are like, all right, take it away, I'm gonna go and you do all the hard work. It's like, no, that's not that's not at all how it should work. And that's incredible that you're providing resources to parents. And it's wild out there in the secular world. So I'm curious, what strategies do you recommend for parents raising children with strong Catholic values?
Well, I think this strategy is that, they learn the faith in the home. That starts that foundation there. And if you can start from day one and you start really early, you have a better shot. So from the moment those kids are born, we're teaching them virtue. And what I think is really powerful about this series of the 7 Deadly Dragons. We're taking the 7 deadly sins, and sin is something that separates us from God, right? And we want to figure out, how do we slay these dragons? And when the kids memorize the dragons from very early, and they start hearing the stories, and they get engaged by the pictures of the saints and the dragons and the weapons and the armor, they know it, they love it. And they start to memorize these dragons, and that's really powerful when we know our enemy. We know who we're up against. And you talked about the secular world. There's so many obstacles and so much stuff out there. If you can identify your dragon, you can slay your dragon. And we hear, parents, even 5-year-olds, my godson's 5. And I was telling, my friend was telling me he had way too much pizza for supper the other night and went outside, got a bellyache. Came in and he's like, hey, Dad, I think the indigo one got me. That's the gluttony dragon. So even a 5-year-old, they can start to recognize when they're being lazy, when they're being greedy, because they know, each dragon has a color. And usually the little kids will say it's the red one or the green one, but they also have a really cool name in like Greek or Latin or Hebrew, it's just really, I think, naming the dragon, naming the obstacles, and naming the mission. We want to be saints. We want our kids to be saints. We want them to get to heaven, and we plaster that mission everywhere, all over our house. Become a saint, become a saint, become a saint. I've handed out like 60,000 of these wristbands that say, become a saint, be not afraid. So when our kids know the mission and they know the obstacles, they have a much better chance of living a life of virtue. And I think that's important for parents to lay that foundation early.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it's our job as parents to, like you said, lay that foundation. And it's funny because I've been reading the series, and my daughter's 4 years old. I find her just looking at the pictures, and she's like, she wants to know more about this. And I guess I was going to ask, like, what would be the appropriate age to either read aloud or to have a child read these books?
Yeah, every kid's different, but even 4 and 5-year-olds, and we've heard that from families, that the pictures will draw them in. we're looking for goodness, beauty, truth, right? Like that's Catholicism. The dragons represent what is evil, false, and ugly. So they're trying to take the good, the true, and the beautiful and corrupt it into what is evil, false, and ugly. So the pictures will draw them in. Beauty draws them in. They see that and they want to see it. And they might just look at the pictures when they're really little. The stories will be captivating for, anywhere from like 5 to 13. And we hear parents say, my 23-year-old's listening in, my teenagers keep listening in. You're like, the stories are funny. There's a lot of 80s references. I grew up in the 80s, the parents will laugh at those things, but like the stories for the whole family to listen, as long as the kid will sit and listen to a story, I think the whole family, we encourage people to read them out loud. But then there's also QR codes throughout the stories for deeper catechesis for maybe the older kids. So we try to find a range of ways of different learning methods for kids and parents.
Yeah. No, it's great. I was reading, I'm like, wow, I'm enjoying reading this. This is obviously for adolescents and children, but even parents, I think will find it very interesting. And like you said, there's a lot of 80s references, which I also grew up in the 80s.
Good. Yeah.
Are there any particular saints or Catholic figures that really kind of featured in the stories that help Sir Roland? Who's Sir Roland? Pater Latu's he's kind of the main character in this. So how are these saints chosen?
Yeah. So, Roland's my middle name, so I'm technically the young boy in here. And so every story has a dragon. So, for instance, the first book is Red Dragon of Pride. You start with Pride, and so there's always going to be a legendary slayer of ages past. So every story features a saint. So Mary, obviously, it would be humility and slaying pride. And so St. Joseph is featured in envy. And then we got St. Paul for zeal, to slay sloth. And then we have St. Francis for greed and John Paul II for wrath because of his forgiveness. And then we have St. Therese teaching us temperance, and St. Philomena is a special saint of mine. My youngest daughter, by the way, is named Lumina Lucia. So she's also a Lucy. I'm an eye doctor. I'm not going to give away any answers to your trivia or anything, but St. Louis Lucy is a great patron of mine as well. And today's my wedding anniversary, so I love St. Lucy very much. So, but Philomena, especially, we named our youngest daughter. She's had a direct impact on our life from her prayers and intercessions, and she's the saint featured for chastity, to slay that dragon of lust. And her story is incredible, and she's really featured a lot in that book as well. So.
It's wild how the Holy Spirit works. As you mentioned, you're an eye doctor. It's the memorial of St. Lucy, and there's so many connections throughout this entire show that were completely unplanned. So that's incredible. Back actually, take it back, about your, as an eye doctor, has that put at play in any of your writings at all, or has that inspired anything you've written?
Yeah, everything. My career as an eye doctor, I love the eye. I think there's a lot of spiritual references to the eye. We actually have a confirmation retreat called Sanctified. So it's a whole analogy on the eye. And then the books themselves are the visible light spectrum. So it's red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet is the colors of the dragons. And Jesus represents light. He is the light of the world. All light together is white light. That's all the virtues together. It's Jesus Christ. It's perfect virtue, right? And so we're trying to learn all these virtues, and together they create white light. They create Jesus, the light of the world. We're called to be the light of the world. And so I don't know if kids still learn the Roy G. Biv, but that's what I used, because that is the visible light spectrum, and that's really featured a lot in the books as well. And that all comes from my eye doctor background.
That's so cool. I noticed that there's like kind of that pattern of the color that represents, and I was like, there's got to be a reason why John chose this as kind of the visual aid, and that makes even more sense now. So that's very cool.
And like I said, the colors help them memorize the dragons. So yeah,
right. Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this the other day about how children are there's a certain age where they really are good at memorizing words, but then this is perfect because they're looking at the colors associated with the particular dragon / sin. Any challenges you came in facing in writing this series, especially when making kind of the theological depth of understandable and appealing to young audiences?
Yeah, lots of them. Every dragon attacked me when I was trying to write these stories. So I'm an eye doctor. I'm a scientist. I never thought of myself as a speaker and author. So God has a sense of humor. But I originally was writing a catechetical book. I do a podcast called Saturdays with Sir Roland on Catholic Sprouts, and I'm like, I'll just share this in the format of book and give parents more catechetical resources. And then my early readers said, kids like stories. They want stories,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, all right, I'll try to write a story. And then I realized I can't write this into one story. We got to do 7. And I pretty much announced on January 1st of last year to my whole podcast audience across the world that I was doing 7 books this year, so to write 7 books, produce them, design them, edit them, and release all 7 of them in 9 months was a pretty incredible feat. I wouldn't put that on myself again. But it was a whole family effort. I wouldn't have been able to do this without my entire family. My daughter drew the dragons and the saints. My son drew the weapons and the armor. My media guy was designing these books. My wife and other daughter did all of the editing. So I'm really proud of what my family did, because I wrote the stories and my family made them 10 times better, made them visually appealing. And that's why it's a really special project for me. It's because it's a stories written by a family for families. And it was really a team effort.
Wow, that's incredible that you have your whole family join in on this endeavor. For all those that are listening out there, you can find more information. We have the website in the show document and the show notes, extraordinarymission.com. It's kind of the hub where you can find all things about John and his ministry there. We got just a few, 20 seconds left. Any last bit of advice, maybe for parents who might be struggling on how to raise saints out there?
Yeah, I'm with you, and I'm praying for you. Pray for me, but just persevere, keep trying your best, and let God's grace do the rest. That's the first dragon slaying maxim, and God will take care of it. But we got to try our best. We got to do, give them the resources and stay holy and slay dragons. That's what I keep telling my kids.
I love it. Thank you so much, John, and of course, happy anniversary to you and your wife. And thanks for joining us. And that's it for Morning Joy, where truth matters. Now, of course, there's a couple paths we can take, right? You know the ones. If you're listening on the radio, then obviously Holy Mass is coming up next, please pray for us. We will continue to pray for you, especially as we go now on close to the 3rd week of Advent. Joy, that's our homework that Julie Carrick gave us. We find joy, especially this weekend. There we go. Let's find some joy this weekend, whatever may be coming our way. And otherwise, join us for the after show clubhouse, where we get to debrief from the show, expand upon some of the things that occurred during the show, and of course get to hang out with you. That's right. Just search Morning Joy Radio or GRN online on any of the socials. You'll find us. We recommend YouTube. Got a great community there of joyful pilgrims or joyful warriors. So stay tuned for that. Otherwise, this is us parting ways. God bless and make it a joyful weekend. We'll see you.
This has been Morning Joy, where truth matters, hosted by Keith Downey. Take some joy with you today. Visit grnonline.com/joy to listen again, share a segment, or answer the question of the day. That's grnonline.com/joy.